Well, we are back, folks, and we apologise for the little technological mishap. I can't even say the words clearly, and that's
we also have linguistic mishaps.
My fault.
So how well do you know your friends, people? How well do you know your friends? So I thought one of my biggest friends, my BFF, is technology, because I befriended them. It's a gender fluid thing. I befriended them years ago. They're my best buddy. And now they're not.
No.
So welcome back to Two Chaps, Many Cultures, and the culture of two chaps, middle-aged white dudes wrangling with technology. And let's see how we can make this work for us. Brett,
you know what we need? You know what we need? A director. So that's why we've got Kelly.
I got this.
A director with an artistic bent.
we had a comment when we went live with the mishap. There was a comment by Antimo Cimino over in Portland, who said, "Did you guys have aliens on the program today?" So the answer is yes. All three of us are. We're just learning about this now. So
yeah, well,
Kelli, welcome to have you on here. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm super delighted to be here. This is so exciting. When I saw that you guys were doing Arts Week, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's got my name written all over it." I just love what you're doing. I love these conversations, and I'm delighted to chat with you both.
Well, then tell the people who don't know you yet, what is the art angle that drives you, Kelli?
Theater. I am a huge theater nerd, have been. Forever. Some people in this community may recognize me from my intercultural work and being in the CTAR community. But what really has always driven me has been theater. I was chasing Broadway dreams for a long time and thought I was going to be the first, or not the first, but the next Oprah Winfrey. And then life happened and took me into diversity, equity, and inclusion and intercultural work. But theater never stopped. So that's the part that is probably a surprise to some people, is that theater has always been my first love.
Well, it's no surprise to us that know you, obviously, because if you ever see Kelli present a workshop or present or even facilitate a group, there is a lot of the skills that she brings to that, and it makes for some really a level of comfort for people when they see somebody able to get up and express themselves and invite and have the ability to invite other people to express themselves in their own setting and in their own comfort level. And that's the skill you bring to it. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks. I try.
Well, as Yoda said, there is no try. There is only do or do not. And you certainly do. You do. You do. So is your love more towards acting and pulling the strings behind the scene, or directing and pulling the strings behind the scene, or is it acting on stage? What passion is stronger for you, or is that equal?
I have to say that I think that when I'm directing, and I've been directing for a really, really long time, then I'm like, I really miss being on the stage. And then there are times when I feel like, I've been acting for a long time, and then I'll say, oh, you know what, I'm much better director than I am an actor. I should probably go back to directing. So it seems as if I can't do without either, and it seems as if I suffer from imposter syndrome in both. So, but I think that I feel most confident, and I think that I am most, I love the ability to take all of the aspects of theater and create one production. So being able to know what lighting we need, what costuming we need for this, to where the people are supposed to be, how they present what the story that they're telling. Being able to orchestrate all of that is so exciting for me, to be able to read a script. I always tell people, if I read a script and I can't see it play out in every detail in my head, then it's not the play I'm supposed to direct. But if it's a play that I can see the whole production and hear the audience's reaction, then I know that that's the one that I'm supposed to do. And I get super excited. I get a bee in my bonnet in order to do it. I can't, my dog with a bone, I can't let it go. So everybody on my board knows that they just need to get out of my way when I read one of those scripts, because it's gonna be in our season. So, but yeah, so I get super excited about directing, and I love to act, but I feel like I'm a stronger director than an actor.
You said something that triggered me, or that had my flags go up. You said imposter. And I think this is something that I recognize with a lot of the clients that the three of us work with, when they most of us who do our work deal with people in either in the DEI field or in global mobility and cultural adjustment, and the adjusting to another set of normal, the adjusting to another set of behaviors. People often tell me that they feel inauthentic in doing so. They feel that they are imposters at being global professionals. And I know that I've been that way myself. And how many of you would agree that whenever you try something new for the first time, or the first couple of times, you feel like a fraud because you pretend that you're really good at it and you're still learning along the way? So how do you think that your theater experience has given you the tools or the personal stories and experiences that you can share with your clients, that imposter is, well, that's a thing, and you'll get over it and you'll get better at it, right? Is
sure. I have to say, the very first couple of times that I did facilitation, I used to step off stage and say to myself, fooled them again. Because I would always feel like in that moment I was acting, right? Which is, I think I really have always tapped into acting no matter when, because if I'm feeling fearful, if I feel as if I am stepping into something that might be, I bit off more than I can chew or whatever, I'm like, all I got to do is go in here and fake it till I make it, right? So it's always acting to me. And I tap into that because I think that there is a strength in that helps me to find my voice, right? So there are times when I feel like I have a lot of information in my head. I've been doing this work for a really, really long time, but with certain audiences or with certain clients, I'll put it that way, I feel like I don't know if I know this audience as well. So for example, I grew up in higher education. So my very first clients were always university professors, students, etc. So when I started working in the corporate environment, I was always much more nervous because I didn't know that language, right? And so I was like, but I know the tools, I know the information. And so I have to stand on the fact that as an actor, I know my lines. So let me just get out here and say my lines as I know them. And so that was true for me in this work as well. So I always tap into that. I think that there's always just a little bit of that in all of us, trying to stand up, stand in our fear, walk in integrity and tap into the things that we know and just do it, right? The show must go on.
Yeah, Sue just made a comment, and I'll bring it up again. Kelli is authenticity embodied. I've kind of learned something recently about the word authentic, which made me think about it a little bit, and it comes from Seth Godin, who says authenticity is really not what we really want from people. It is, because if you were truly authentic, everything you would have, the experiences of your day, the frustrations, the argument you have with your spouse, the argument, the trouble you have with your kids, would be brought to every setting you have. That would be our authentic self. But we're asked to, when we maybe show up in an office and do a presentation or train people, we're asked to actually compartmentalize that, put that aside. And that doesn't mean we're being untrue to ourselves. It just means we're being respectful for the person, the audience we're talking to. So it was an interesting term. I get the point about authenticity, and I certainly have always thought you as somebody who just brought your whole self to the whatever you were delivering, whatever you were teaching. I always feel that is something, and it never comes across as I'm pretending. And that maybe that's the true art of good acting, right? You talked to Tim Reed yesterday. It's amazing. I don't know. You know, how do you talk to just us guys after talking to someone like Tim Reed? I don't know.
She has to decompress somehow.
I know. It's like you got to get with some people, But there was such a wonderful conversation. How he managed to say how he brought his experiences, his story, and I don't know. It was just a wonderful conversation. Question to you.
Sure. Well, you know what? I think that what I heard in there was that I understand that a lot of people feel as if they need to be something else when they stand up on a stage in order to present. They have to present as an expert. I don't operate from that mindset because I don't believe that there's a such thing as an expert in this work. I've said this before. I think that we are specialists. I think that there are those of us who have a great deal of knowledge and that we have something to tell and to share and to teach. But I think that to say an expert in cultural work, and maybe it's just because of the fact that I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. It seems like if I'm saying that I'm an expert, then I never make mistakes. And I do. I suffer from foot and mouth syndrome. And so I think that what I like to share with people is that I have a great deal of knowledge, but I'm doing this too. I'm learning as I go as well. I maybe have been doing it a little bit longer than you, but that doesn't mean that, I am an expert in this, right? So, but when I do stand on stage and I am feeling a little bit nervous about sharing with the client or with the audience, I am always fully myself. So, because I don't know how else to do it, right? I'm from a family of storytellers. And so we've always told a story. There's almost no time when you can ask me a question that I don't package it in well, let me tell you a little story, and how it all began, right? And so I'm really, really very connected to this notion of the power of story to connect. And I feel like there is strength in the vulnerability of my own story. And so if that is what it means to be authentic, then absolutely, I want to stand in that authenticity. I think that that's real. So, that's, and I'm okay with it being called authentic.
That's a good connection you make here, because I think in our Western context, authenticity often is very close to the vulnerability idea, that being okay with showing our creases, our wrinkles, and our flaws, with the spotlight shining at them, is something that many of us are uncomfortable with, either because we were taught that way or our environment shaped us that way, and becoming more comfortable with showing flaws or showing vulnerability is I think the older I get, I think it's a sign of maturity. And I don't want to date us, but I know I'm an old fart. And I recognize with myself, the older I get, the less I care about what other people think of me. Whereas my wife would say, it's none of my business what other people think of me.
Yeah.
So the less I care about that, the less I am craving other people's validation or their permission to be the way that I am. The less I care about that, the more authentic I think I am. If I think back in my mid-20s, I would have been terrified to be on stage. I would have been terrified to do the work that I do today, because I would have been so afraid of rejection or of being judged. So is age a part of that, or is maturity, maybe not age, but is maturity a part of this?
Absolutely. I think that I agree with you 100% that the older I get, the less concerned I am about what people think and say. And I also feel like theater helped to shape me in that as well, because the whole work, the whole career is around judgment. So, from the very first start, from auditions, it's about being judged. When you're doing performances, you get critiques, you get direction as you go through the process. So, I've always been used to, and I even craved some of that feedback. And I didn't want to only be told what I was doing well, right? Because I felt like if I got that challenging feedback or that negative feedback, then that was what helped me strengthen my performance. So I believe that that's helped me feel very, very confident in feedback, or not to be very sensitive to feedback when it comes. Because I think that all of it is helpful. Right. And so if it does come at me, if I was younger and I didn't have that theater training, I think I would have been very sensitive and got my feelings hurt or pushed back or whatever. But knowing that there was a deep part of the work that I was doing with theater already, I craved it. I hungered it. If I didn't get it, I thought something was wrong. So, but, you know, again, as I age, I am at this place where I think that on top of that experience, I'm also less concerned about what people say, and I have to do what I do. You know, for years, people told me, you need to pick one, Kelli. You can't do diversity work and theater. And I always rejected that. A lot of when my independent consulting work really kind of kicked off was the more that I started using storytelling, because when I started doing story in cross-cultural work, nobody was doing it. I'm just gonna be honest. This new boom of using story in intercultural cross DEI work, this is relatively new, but I've been doing that since I started in 20 years ago already, because I started out with my Anything But Black story in about, I want to say about 2020, in 2000. And when I started doing that, I started doing it for the Sitar family, right? So, and Anything But Black was really my journey, my personal journey about growing up on the South Side and wanting to be anything but Black, and then coming full circle to not wanting to be anything but Black. And the more that I did that story globally, the more I realized that this notion of being othered, not feeling good enough, being marginalized because of what I looked like, was a universal story. And so I really started trying to hone in on that process of the power of story. And so it's the foundation of what I've always done. As a matter of fact, when I first started doing diversity work in the early 90s, there was a gentleman who came up to me after a session, and he said, you know what, this what did he call them? These little narratives that you share, the little, what's another word for a short story? Oh, I can't remember right now. But
episodes, anecdotes.
You know, he was just like, these little anecdotes that you share, you know, they're great and everything, but you need to give much more substance. So part of the reason why I went back for my master's was because I needed to speak to that dude, right? But what I discovered was that all I did was continue to tell story, but I had a couple of other, you know, some data to throw in, just
you
so
put
that
it
I
on
could
scientific underpinning to placate the nerd in the room who wouldn't appreciate the storytelling.
That's right. Who thought that it was soft learning or whatever. So, but story remained constant through all of my work. So, yeah, I think I went off on a tangent. Not sure how I got there.
No, you used a word. I know that maybe Chris is going to bring this up. I'm going to maybe jump ahead, but you used the word soft, you know, and I know Christian has this thing about.
Well, I have a visceral reaction to that.
What we teach is soft skills, when in fact they're actually so important, and they're really hard skills. They're not the data, they're not the written record and research, but the skills in actually crossing cultures and being able to be adept. So your experience of crossing that culture from somebody who learns a different way was just, you took it to the extent you went off and got actual, you know, education in it and really applied yourself. That's a commitment, right? That's a real commitment to respecting the audience that you bring, right? That comes to you. It's great. Sorry.
Yeah, you know, I think it's that. I think it's also a little sad, honestly, that I had to question that what I offered was enough, because that kind of sits in that imposter syndrome too, right? You know, if I'm being challenged by what I'm bringing and thinking that that's not enough, then I'm going to constantly chase that thing that I think serves to validate me further. For years, I thought that I needed a doctorate. You know, I was like, I'm going to go back, I'm going to get a doctorate because I know that that's going to bring, you know, just a little bit more cachet. Screw it. You know, I talked to several people who hold doctorates and, you know, who have doctorate degrees. And one of them told me, she was just like, Kelly, you're brilliant. Listen, if you study, she's like, think about the topic that you think you want to get your degree in. Go out and buy 20 books on it. She's like, and then if you want, write a couple of blogs about it. She goes, boom, there you go. That's all we're doing anyway. Then you don't have to stand in front of a bunch of people.
You just try to tip over the ivory tower that's going to collapse with a big bang. So, but Kelly,
I'm getting my books now as we speak.
Yeah. Are you leading them against the tower? So you said you grew up in higher education, Kelly, and I grew up in a culture where education is the social currency. In German culture, you only climb the social ladder if you have a degree to prove that you're worthy of the next step, so to say. So that chip on your shoulder that you were describing, almost exactly the same here. Now, I think for you, and I don't want to put this on you, but what I'm hearing between the lines, and you tell me if I'm off, you also had to fight the validation, or the perceived validation challenge of being a Black woman in a predominantly male white environment in this country. So you had more than just the ivory tower battle to fight. You also had the race battle and the gender battle to deal with. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that for me was really, really quite painful as I tried to climb a ladder of success, right? I'm lucky that I tell people all the time, some of my friends that grew up in mixed communities and went to school with other white kids or kids from other cultures, that they had a very different upbringing than me. Because when I grew up in an all Black community on the south side of Chicago, there was so much comfort and security and pride in Blackness that even the messages that I received about anti-Blackness, which led to my piece, Anything But Black, there was still so many stories that I got about the brilliance of Black people, the contributions of Black people, the resistance of Black people, the resilience of Black people. And so all of that was also deeply embedded in me at a young age, so that I didn't have to question my worth, right? In a way that some of my friends who grew up in more mixed environments had to question their worth, because when they were looking around for examples in teachers or in leaders or in academicians that were setting the standards for our brilliance and whatnot, they didn't have those examples. Yeah. So and so then they began to question just how beautiful is Black, right? Because I always knew that it was, but in the depth of my body, but socially, which is what I was struggling against in Anything But Black. I knew it was fantastic, but for some reason out there, everybody kept telling me that it was something that it wasn't, and it confused me, right? And so it seemed like it would be easier to be something other than Black because of those external messages.
Well, if it puts you at ease at all, if it moves the needle at all, I have two white daughters, as you can imagine, and my youngest will be 15 in a month, and all of her beauty standards that she is looking up to are Black. So I think and I don't say that my daughter is representative of the society that we live in, but I think we've seen decades ago a pop cultural shift towards Black beauty that my children are now taking for granted. They don't see this as a novelty presented to them. For them, that's real, that's normal, that's how they perceive it. So you fought the fight, or you're still fighting the fight, and I'm suspecting our children, the next generations, will move the needle much further than we were able to.
Yeah, I hope that they can hold those two truths, right? That they are absolutely beautiful as they are, so that they don't feel like they have to be something other than what they are. And I hope that they can still validate and recognize the beauty of others too, right? Because that's the challenge, is being able to hold those both truths. Can we all be beautiful in our own way? Or do we have to ascribe to the other way in order to be considered beautiful?
And we all are. No, well, especially you, but and the hairless guy next to me there. All right, excellent, Kelly. I really appreciate you taking time and bearing with our imbecile tech skills. So we made it work regardless, and
it's a pleasure.
Beautiful. We should do this again. I told Brett, and now I'm telling you on air with witnesses, we're going to put together a panel, and I want you on that panel because I have so many questions to ask you that go beyond the theater thing, and I want other voices to come in there. So stay tuned, people. We're still working on it behind the scenes, but we'll get it together.
I'd be happy. Just let me know.
Thank you again, Kelly. Wonderful to see you and talk to you again. And we will do that. And we thank everybody for joining and throwing your comments if you're watching the replay. And apologies again for my technological inabilities. But we will try
ours, not just yours, ours. I include myself in that.
Mine too.
All right, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.